Hello everyone and welcome back to Gregtech New Horizons. So last episode we moved over our blast furnaces from the old base and upgraded to tungsten steel coils. I found that between episodes we weren't producing enough hydrogen, so I've added in a couple more basic electrolyzers powered with the gas turbines. The hydrogen we mostly use in large quantities here for fuel desulfurization and also to hydrocrack light fuel, but there's some processes we'll be setting up today which should give us hydrogen as a byproduct. I noticed that the production of high-octane gasoline wasn't keeping up, and that is because of a lack of toluene, which comes from this distillation tower, which is because of the hydrogen, so we'll keep an eye on that throughout the episode. So what is the goal for today? Well, I would like to expand out the auto-crafting capabilities. We set this up way back when well, not way back, it wasn't that long ago. When we first established this base, we set up a couple of machines here which we haven't really made use of since. The majority of our machines are still here at the old base. I would like to get these moved over, but for things like the extruder and the assembling machines, we would like to have at least one per fluid and one per extruder shape. But we do have a problem in achieving this, and it's not the first time we've run into this either. As you know, in Gregtech, we need circuits to craft machines, a lot of circuits to craft machines. The circuits we make in the cleanroom, and circuits are also going to take circuit boards. However, now that we're in EV, and we have been for a while, we have access to epoxy, and the advanced circuit board replaces the plastic circuit board. This thing can let us craft HV circuits much cheaper, and we can get a lot more circuits for the same amount of materials, so it's absolutely worth picking up epoxy. So if we check the quest line for this, we first of all need to get phenol, and there's a few different ways to get phenol actually. We could do our chlorobenzene, which we picked up on Mars. We have almost a full super tank here of chlorobenzene. However, I think we're going to go for something a bit more renewable than that, which is also going to give us an acetone byproduct. And that is going to be isopropyl benzene with oxygen. Isopropyl benzene is phosphoric acid, propene, and benzene. Phosphoric acid is apatite, sulfuric acid, and water. Once we have that, we combine with epichlorohydrin, which I haven't really decided how we're going to get yet. After we have that, we create epoxy, and then we can create our circuit boards for the circuits. Easier said than done though, so it's been a couple of hours I've been crafting some LCRs. Most of the time though was spent looking through NEI, and I was very confident on the route we were going to take to get epoxy until I spotted this recipe here for epichlorohydrin. I also mentioned earlier we're going to do isopropyl benzene. That is now changed. We're going to do a distillation tower for wood tar. I think it's important to show this. There is a lot of times in this game where you kind of change your mind, and there's some things that influence what you'll do in the future as well. So long story short, we need another pyrolyse oven, we need one more distillation tower, and 4 more LCRs. We have 5 here, so yeah, we have all the LCRs we need. I think the route we'll be switching to will be much better for us in this specific case, since we're doing high octane gasoline. One of the other options for epichlorohydrin is to use glycerol, and you get glycerol as a byproduct of biodiesel, which you can then use for cetane. But since we no longer use that, I think it's better to go the route we're gonna go here. So yeah, we've got more crafting to do. And I need to change up those LCRs. You know, every now and then, sometimes you just forget to stop and smell the roses. Or the poppies here. Sometimes you're just so focused on the end goal, like what I am right now with epoxy, that you kind of forget to just enjoy it along the way. Just waiting on these very slow recipes. So for the distillation tower, we do need a decent amount of stainless steel. Aha! Oh, this is tungsten as well. Ah, that's a good find. I mean, it was me that smelted it, but it was like a couple of days ago, so I don't remember putting that in there. It's nice when that happens. Anyways, we should now have the materials for our next pyrolyse oven. You may remember the pyrolyse oven takes coil blocks. We have some spare nichrome here that I think we'll use. We definitely can't afford to go up to tungsten steel yet. It is just 10 coils that we need for this, right? I always forget with the pyrolyse oven. Yeah, 10 coils, and in fact we could probably even upgrade these Canthal ones, since we have some spare nichrome. We'll see. I just want to prioritize getting this new one up and running. I did also go ahead and fix up our LCRs here. We'll go over this thing later, but we do need the outputs of the distillation tower to be able to filter in these things. And we want to do it basically the same as the other one. Oh, I forgot the muffler hatch actually. We want it to be the same as this one, so maintenance hatch on the left, output bus on the right, along with the output hatch. And we're going to be doing this recipe here with circuit 9, so logs is going to be our input once again. We will just run this at MV, but eventually I think we'll probably overclock this to HV. So we got the energy hatch, the coil blocks, and the rest is just casings, I think. Besides the muffler hatch on top, which we're missing. Oh, and the input bus for the logs, which unfortunately again has to be on top. I really don't like that requirement. Okay, so that's our Pyrolyse oven. We need a distillation tower now. Oh, look at that, we already had the EV circuits for it. We're just a few casings short for this. We have plenty of stainless steel though left to use. And this one will be running at HV. And this should be our EV muffler hatches. We'll stick with the EV ones for now. Technically we can make the IV ones, but we're kind of pushing it a little bit for the tungsten steel. Oh, I didn't count the right number of casings. We're still 3 short here. Every single time we build a multi-block, we're always short. Anyways, we got the muffler hatch, and we'll also switch out the muffler hatch on this. Oh no wait, this is already EV. I thought this was an MV hatch. Maybe it's the blast furnaces over here. Ah yeah, it's our blast furnace here that only has MV. While we're here, we can also switch out the Canthal coils in the other Pyrolyse oven. You can see in the tooltip here, we don't get any sort of energy discount, but Cupronickel gives 50% speed, Canthal gives 100%, Nichrome is 150%, so it is actually linear. I guess it adds 50% per coil. So now we need to get power to all of these things, and we'll need MV and also HV here. So I grabbed some cables and transformers. This is our EV line here, which we coloured last episode. Just double checking, yep, aluminium. Hopefully the cable loss won't affect us too much when the cable is this long. This one is the input, right? So we have to point this to the aluminium cable. And then on top here we transform to MV and run the annealed copper cable up to the energy hatch, which should be orange. All this aluminium has to be pink. And the last portion of HV is going to be blue alloy cable, which goes into our distillation tower here. Awesome, so we should be able to scan this and see some power running through these. Yeah, it looks like we're giving this 501 EU per tick, and the MV one is receiving 126. Is that within bounds of the recipes? I think so, we only need 64 for the wood tar, and the distillation tower needs 256, so yeah, we're giving this way more than enough. We have to also do a quick round of maintenance. It's almost about time we invest in that tape we can put on these things. I think it's actually really easy to craft as well. The oven also needs a circuit, and by the way, thank you so much for your comment, reminding me that you can actually reprogram these just with a screwdriver in your inventory. There's circuit 9, I believe we need. And if we give this a drawer full of logs, we should see that we're going to be producing wood tar here. Are we going to turn on? Excellent, first time. So we're going to get more charcoal out of this, just goes in a drawer to be stored. Actually, this isn't going so flawlessly. If we give this some more logs, we also hooked up the machine controller cover just to disable it if we have the output hatch full. We managed to get this to run once, however, there is not enough energy being sent to this thing. I think the reason for that is we're not giving enough amps to this aluminium cable here. So when some of these other multi-blocks are running, there's not enough power going to the end of the line here. Our situation with the high octane gasoline seems to have fixed itself. I mean, 1.5 million, that's gonna last us at least the rest of the episode. So I think actually what I'm gonna do, just temporarily, is disconnect these lines. I'm definitely gonna forget I've done this. And we'll prioritize sending all the power to the distillation tower and Pyrolyse oven here, just to get it running today. I know that once we get epoxy, we actually have unlocked the Lapitronic energy orb, which is the IV power storage. And that means instead of storing power at EV tier, we can store it at IV, and we can send it much longer distances without the cable loss. Okay, so what do we get out of this distillation tower? First output is creosote oil. Second is phenol, one of the main components we need for epoxy. The third one is benzene, also something we use for epoxy, although we are getting that out of another distillation tower as well. We also get toluene, something actually we were short on at the beginning of the episode for our high octane gasoline. So this distillation tower is actually very, very beneficial for us right now. We also get dimethylbenzene, if I can spell this correctly. I think that's right. And did I build this one too high? Oh yeah, I did. We don't even need this top layer. Alright, so we have to get some super tank buffers and some for the LCRs there as well. Although I did batchcraft some circuits between episodes, so we should have the materials required for that. And next we have to filter everything into these LCRs. And done. Everything has been filtered. We are making epichlorohydrin, hypochlorous acid, acetone, and finally epoxy. So starting with the epichlorohydrin, there is 5 different recipes we can choose from. And we went with the Circuit 24 recipe here, so we need hypochlorous acid, chlorine, propene, and sodium hydroxide dust. The propene we can get out of this distillation tower here. We have quite a decent amount of backlogged, and I think it also comes out of this one. No, that's propane. Propane is different, yeah. So we're getting propene out of this. Chlorine we have to provide manually, although as you'll see in a second, we do get some of it back. Sodium hydroxide we also have to make, but we'll get onto that later on, and hypochlorous acid we make in the next chemical reactor here. Hypochlorous acid is just chlorine and water, which also gives us diluted hydrochloric acid, not the same as hypochlorous, so we'll have to have a distillery to distill this. So for all of these, we're just using the filters on the conduits here, and underneath we have this connected to our fluid P2P network right there. Since we don't have water on the fluid P2P, we're just supplying that with a reservoir directly into the bottom port of the input hatch. All of these machines are running at HV. I think the only one required to run at HV is this one here for acetone, but just to simplify the wiring, we're running them all at HV, so we're transforming from IV, EV, and then HV. Also, the sodium hydroxide comes from this interface here, which we appear to run out of. We also pull calcium for another process for acetone, which is the next chemical reactor here to make acetone. So we are producing a tiny amount of acetone out of, I think, that end distillation tower we just added. No, we're not. There's too many. I added all the super tanks here, by the way. And where are we getting acetone? Yeah, it's this one here, from wood vinegar. We're making acetone, which we appear to run out of. I think it's all in the buffer on the inputs. So for the acetone recipe, we were going to do isopropyl benzene, but I decided instead we're going to use the acetic acid, which we have in large quantities. That I know we get from 2 of those distillation towers. And we mix that with calcium on circuit 24. We get 4 buckets of acetone and 4 buckets of CO2 gas. The acetone we buffer in this fluid tank, and for all of these we also have the fluid detector covers, which will turn off the LCRs if the output buses ever end up full. And the CO2 gas comes out of the second output hatch here. We're just going to let that void. We can always come back to it and use it later, I just don't think it's worth processing it at this time. Then for the last LCR we're making our Epoxid, which is using this circuit 24 recipe here, so we need more sodium hydroxide. That also comes from the interface below. The acetone, which comes from this chemical reactor here. The phenol comes from the distillation tower from the wood tar. Hydrochloric acid we have to deal with. We'll come back to that in a second. And epichlorohydrin, which is made in the first chemical reactor. I don't know why I went right to left, but that's the way it is. So yeah, I was considering putting a super tank on the outputs of all of these, but honestly I don't think that's necessary. Also, you remember I disconnected these lines here? Well, that turns out to be a big mistake. So if we come over here to our fuel desulfurization, it's all gone. All of it. Except the refinery gas, since we don't use that anywhere, apart from in the turbines. I think what happened though is, when we turned that off, since we're using machine controller covers and we're enabling with redstone, that is effectively like hitting this with the soft mallet. And if you do that with not enough power, then it will consume the input items and just void it. But since we're not giving it power, since we disconnected the lines, we lost like, I don't know, 5 million millibuckets of fluid. Anyways, we'll get that back. The most important part is we didn't lose our fuel. No, we still have our high octane gasoline. Okay, so what is the next step out of this? I think we need to deal with the byproducts here. Okay, so the first thing is that we want a way to deal with the hydrochloric acid, or the diluted hydrochloric acid that we get as a byproduct. So I made up this LV distillery, but I don't think that's going to be fast enough, to be honest. We go with the MV one for now. So the beauty of using applied energistics means that we don't actually need to do this on site. We can do it basically anywhere. We have this MV line which we'll connect to. And so we need to get our diluted hydrochloric acid, which is coming out on brown channel, and is also being inserted into the P2P channel, the fluid P2P, which by the way are bidirectional, so you can send fluids in and out to any connection of these. So it should just be a matter of hooking up the ender fluid conduits, setting the filter on the insert for diluted hydrochloric. You know what, actually maybe we do a small buffer in here, just in case the machine doesn't keep up. Yeah, we'll use a very small tank for this. Yeah, this will turn all the diluted hydrochloric into regular hydrochloric acid. So I think over here is where we're going to have the bulk storage for hydrochloric acid. At least one source of it. So we'll come out of the distillery into a super tank. We'll set this on blue channel just so that it doesn't directly go into the fluid P2P. And then from underneath the super tank, we connect this also to our fluid conduit network. And this will be extract on brown, which should send it all into the LCRs over there. Alright, well that was easy. So long as this thing is able to keep up with our diluted hydrochloric acid production. The next thing we want to take care of is the salt water. Actually, before we look at the salt water, I realised here that because we only get part of the hydrochloric acid back, I think eventually through different byproducts. Like, I mean, there's 19 pages of chemical reactions here which give hydrochloric acid. I think eventually we're going to end up with excess of this, but we do need at least some way to buff our production of hydrochloric acid just to make up the difference from what we don't get back. So this is just a chemical reaction between chlorine and hydrogen, but instead of this sending the output of this into the super tank so that it uses all of the chlorine and hydrogen, we're just instead going to pull from the output buffer and send that into the fluid P2P. This is again just the MV, and we take the chlorine from our main chlorine source, which for now is just over here. Although pretty soon we're going to be doing something about our chlorine. There's not really a renewable way to make it, we have to basically get it from other planets. And then our hydrogen just comes from the fluid P2P from this super tank here. I think we can just cap this off right here though. We do need to invest in some facades pretty soon. We have a lot of conduits here showing. I'd quite like to get all of these things hidden. So the next two outputs we need to deal with from the LCRs is the sodium hydroxide and the salt water. It took a little bit to shuffle around some of these transformers down here since we're working with LV power on the grey line, MV power on the orange line, and we're inputting from, what is this, IV power? No, EV power here on the pink one. Okay, so with the floor covered, it's a bit more simple to see what's going on here. So I moved the fluid P2P, which is for this little area here. This setup over here we had before, this is making us nitrogen. Or maybe not. Wait, maybe this was one of the fluids that got voided. Yeah, I think maybe that's what happened on the multi-blocks over there. That system should catch back up. Anyways, what we have over here is a chemical bath for sodium and water. We take the water from this reservoir here, and the sodium comes from our ME interface here with a conveyor module on the bottom of the machine. Both of these are connected up to AE2, and we also have a storage bus on here. So because when we electrolyze salt water we get some of the sodium hydroxide back, I want to prioritize taking it from this source rather than making it new from sodium, which is why we have the storage bus directly on the machine, and this is set to one of the highest priorities in our network. High priority on the storage bus means that it will pull from this last. It will take from all other sources first. We also get some hydrogen, which is also sent out on this fluid conduit and into our main hydrogen storage here. But because this is our only source of sodium hydroxide right now, the storage bus is sending it actually all over to the LCRs over there. We should be seeing these input buses fill up. That one's the calcium. Yeah, this one is now filled up with sodium hydroxide, and the first one should also be full of sodium hydroxide. So once the interfaces catch up and the buffers fill, it should now stop in the machine, and it will actually prioritize taking from these two electrolyzers here, which I decided to do at MV. I'm still not sure about the tier of these machines, I'm kind of just guessing. Like, I don't know if this is going to be fast enough, or, like, yeah, we need to do some more testing, but basically this recipe is 36 seconds at LV. These should both be on circuit 11. We need to hook up the ender fluid conduits, which will connect to our main fluid conduit network. I guess we can connect it up right here actually. Inside those electrolyzers we want to send salt water, which should be in this output hatch. We need to grab a cell of this, set the filters on the inserts. Excellent, this is filling with salt water. I think we also need to give this empty cells. And very, very slowly, it's going to give us chlorine and sodium hydroxide dust. And more hydrogen actually. The hydrogen we can just send back into this main hydrogen tank. So we extract on the fluid on cyan channel actually, which is the only cyan colour on this network, which then goes into the super tank first, and then from there is extract on brown into the P2P network. Although now that I'm saying that, this is eventually going to fill up, and we don't want it to stop when we're full on hydrogen, so actually we're going to, instead we're going to place a separate super tank here for hydrogen, and eventually we'll stick an overflow valve on this one. But then the sodium hydroxide we want to store in a drawer, right here, and the super tank above that. Insert into the drawer on blue for sodium hydroxide. This we want to be our main source of sodium hydroxide, so we'll need another storage bus. But the main thing we're getting out of this is the chlorine, which comes in cell form actually. And we're also one item conduit short, hold on. Okay, I moved our main source of chlorine actually from the tank that used to sit over there, and I hooked up all the inputs and outputs for this. Let's just double check actually we have enough ME channels for here. 7 of 8 in use, nice. 1 left. So we put the storage bus on the drawer. This thing we can set to bidirectional, and we want this on 1000. 1000 is going to be obviously less than 2000, which is what this machine is for. But we still want it to be higher than our drives, so that if any end up in our drives, we want to take from there first, then the drawer, then this chemical bath. Then we can just hook up the cable. Device online, nice. We lock the drawer, and I think we're done here. Hopefully things are fast enough for our needs. This little power issue that we had kind of screws us up a little bit. We're going to connect everything since we're out of logs on the distillation tower there. So this system shouldn't pull too much power. Alright, so now that we have our epoxy, we missed the quest though. We need 18 cells of epichlorohydrin. I don't know if we can manage that actually. Okay, one quest. Let's put these back. What is the next quest here? For bisphenol A? Technically we're not making bisphenol A because we're bypassing this step. Oh, but we do really want the quest here though, don't we? It means that we're going to have to make some up manually. Which is kind of unfortunate because we don't have a way to process bisphenol A either. Okay, what else do we need? Hydrochloric and phenol? You know what? We actually don't even have enough phenol to pull all of this off. This is actually a huge batch of bisphenol A it wants us to make here. Oh, all the voided fluid is really messing with us now. Oh, you know what? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to use our chlorobenzene here. We're not doing anything else with this, so, I mean, we may as well, right? Mix this with some water in a chemical reactor, and we'll get phenol out of this. So after all of the automation we set up today, it turns out that we're just doing this manually after all. Oh, Gregtech New Horizons. What is it, 36 phenol I think we need? Mix all of these for bisphenol. And we combine with sodium hydroxide for our epoxid, which is exactly what we're making in the LCRs, but the quest wants us to do it this way. I guess we have to follow the beaten path here. We want to make it into the sheets, which requires the fluid solidifier. We can actually do this right here for the quest. And I believe there's also a use in fluid form for fiber reinforced epoxy resin sheets. These fiber reinforced I think are used in higher tier of circuits, whereas the regular epoxy sheets are just used in the lower tier. So we'll need a way back at our new base to separate them out and create both epoxy sheets and the fiber reinforced versions. So as you saw with the power situation, we're going to need to buff that thing once again. I think the plan is probably to add one more LCE. This electrotene is what I'm looking for here. We are comfortably making enough high octane gasoline to support another one. But that's not something we're going to get today. We will, however, process all of our rutile and bauxite. I think there's some more at our ore processing system, as one of those combustion engines over there takes a lot of titanium. So back when I was filtering all of those LCRs there, I did actually realise this was all one block off. So you may notice some markers here where I was counting things out. So everything past this point here is actually fine. All of this stuff I'm happy to report is actually okay. Everything here is chunk aligned. And similarly, everything next to our ME controllers is also lined up with what we have over there. Only this path here was offset by one block to the right, which threw off all of this room and also that path over there. So that was a whole lot of fun moving all that. But I know that if I was to ignore it, then I would definitely regret it later on. So to finish off today's episode, I would like to look at a place for our clean room. I think I'm also going to rearrange some of these machines before we start moving the rest from our base. The clean room is also going to take quite a lot of power, since we'll have quite high tier machines in there. And this is not like Omnifactory where you can just plug in the conduits and the CEUs. We do have to run power past this point as well. It only runs to this intersection. Those machines over there are still being powered by cetane. But I think we'll wait until we have IV power storage before we run it that far. Or maybe P2P channels could come in handy here. Yeah, you know what? Let me pose the question. Do you guys know what the minimum distance it is optimal to have EU P2P? I hope I don't regret tearing this out right now, but I think I think we're going to move our clean room. And I do have a space in mind now, actually. This is like, what, the third time we've moved our clean room? Yeah, not nearly as bad this time, though. So I decided actually to put it in this intersection. We haven't got anything hooked up in here, but I think next episode we're going to tackle the automation for all these machines. And once we do that, we should have the components that we need in order to fill out the rest of these machine walls and start our applied energistics auto-crafting. I was looking at the recipe for the circuits again, and I realised that we actually need iron 3. I forgot about this sodium persulfate or iron 3 chloride requirement here, so I think that's something we'll do between episodes actually. I'm looking at doing this recipe here with iron 2 and chlorine, which is going to require us to do 2 more large chemical reactors. Probably I'll put them over there. But we've done a lot of chemistry. I hope it's not too difficult to follow along. I've tried to explain things, but it is kind of difficult when there's so many intertwined recipes like this. So I realised it wouldn't really be much of a satisfying ending if we didn't make at least one of these nanoprocessors with our new epoxy, right? So with the epoxid sheets we combine with gold foil, sulfuric acid. The gold we could do with a little bit more of, but I think that's going to be the case for quite some time. Anyway, this gives us our circuit boards. We then combine that with the iron 3, which we still have our little mini setup over here. This tank is actually full, so this will do actually quite a lot of circuits. Only this time it has to be electrum foil, which is why I wanted to process some more of this electrotine, and I think we got this last episode. I can't remember, it might have been the episode before that. But yeah, this is the reason why I wanted to get some more electrum dust. And this process we can even do at LV, although I don't think that's very practical for us. But we're getting our advanced circuit boards. Other than the boards and the iron 3, we also need the nano component central processing units, which is definitely a mouthful. This requires us to have molten glowstone. This is going to be fun to automate, I think. This step does require the cleanroom for the CPU wafers, but there is actually a large chemical reaction recipe, which obviously we don't need to put inside the cleanroom. So I'm kind of torn on which way to go. For today though, we just use the single block chemical reactor. Molten glowstone and raw carbon fibers. Oh, you know what? I didn't let this get up to efficiency. This may not complete the recipe. I wouldn't be surprised if we just voided one of those things. Yep, we lost it. Okay, we're waiting. So I also left some spaces on the edge of the cleanroom, since we want to eventually have this as max size, which is 15 by 15. And it obviously has to fit within one chunk, just to avoid any chunk boundary issues. So we will expand this to maximum size at some point, but we don't need that much space right now. Anyways, we just hit 100%. Start up the chemical reactor again. Cut down the CPU wafer. With this we get our quest. And these processing units we just have to combine with one of each SMD, fine electrum wire and the advanced circuit boards. And this is a much easier way to create HV circuits. The nanoprocessors. Technically we have made a couple of these before from quest rewards. But now we unlocked our quest. Nice. So now we should more or less be just printing off circuits, which is awesome. And it seems like we have a way to make the EV circuits cheaper as well. Anyways, I think that's about all the time we have for today. We're going to wrap things up. Thank you once again for watching, and I'll see you all soon for some more Gregtech New Horizons.